If you ask me if my recovery is perfect, I'll fall out of my chair laughing, and anybody who knows me will. It's like far from it. There's lots of room for imperfection. And I love your chapter on it because not only said perfectionism, but breaking the bonds. That's exactly it. It imprisons you. It ties you up in knots.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the podcast. I thought about actually saying that incorrectly at first because we're going to be talking about breaking the chapter title is Breaking the Bonds of Perfectionism. I'm so excited about today's, so fired up. I love because perfectionism is it's so pervasive, so deadly. I'm so glad we're going to talk about it. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Hello, Patrick. Hello, Alan Berger.
Good day, gentlemen. Did I say that perfectly?
No, I think let's do it again. Let's try again. I don't know.
Let's try this. Let's get it perfect, Patrick.
Cut.
Hey, it's so funny we were doing this show today. So this morning, Jess went out on a run, and I was with Cece, and she's been really under the weather. She's been homesick for 3 days, and so she's not feeling well. So she said, Daddy, can we make Mommy a card? I want to do a Mother's Day card. I said, oh, yeah, great. Let's do it. So we get a piece of paper and I fold it. And I said, well, what do you want to put on the front of it? And she goes, a balloon. I go, great idea. Says, can you draw the balloon? She goes, I think I can. And so she draws it and she draws a circle. I mean, it's a great balloon she goes, ugh. I go, what's the matter? She goes, it's not perfect.
Oh. How old is she?
3.
Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I was, I thought, well, great for
she said, she didn't imply that. She said it. She said, it's not perfect.
Yeah. First thing was, I'm like, she's mad about it. And I go, what's the matter? She goes, it's not perfect. And I said, well, what's not perfect? Now, she couldn't articulate what that meant, for her. Mm-hmm. Said, what's not perfect about it for you? Because I was trying to get into their little world. And what does perfectionism mean to a 3-year-old?
Well, in a circle.
The balloon somehow didn't look like what balloons, I imagine, are supposed to look like in her little world, right? Mm-hmm. The string was kind of off to the side a little bit and all that other stuff. But, she's a 3-year-old drawing, but it's amazing. She had the conception of what it was supposed to be. And then what she didn't live up to that idea.
And the good news is she's verbalizing it so that you guys can address it.
I said, damn right, it's not perfect. You need to draw this 1,000 times now. Make it perfect. No, I didn't do that. Of course I did. Thank God I didn't do it.
I'm going. I can honestly say I had no fear about that. I didn't think, I hope Alan handled this right. It's like but balloons aren't perfect.
Balloons aren't perfect, but isn't it interesting, though, how these schemas happen so young, right? I mean, so look, she just, she picks it up, I'm Jess was saying something the other day, sometimes that we'll have a bad habit. If we do something, we say, oh my God, that was stupid. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's kind of an expression of your frustration at the time.
Yeah.
But we became so aware of how the kids pick it up. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're like sponges, man. I mean, and I think that, as a parent, I've become poignantly aware at times about all the things I'm teaching her. If we do the balance sheet like we did on Thursday, there's a lot of good things in it, but there's also some red ink on it, right? There's also some red ink on the balance sheet, not just black
and
ink.
Mostly I would imagine it's going to be places where you're just simply not thinking about it. Where you stop and give something, I think sometimes we don't,
right.
We don't give, we use the word thoughtless incorrectly. We tend to, when we say somebody's thoughtless, we tend to kind of say they're mean or bad or something. It's like, but literally thoughtlessness, impacts us all every day. It's just some right. part of this that we don't give any thought to. And, it's, if you think of the word, what word we use in therapy a lot or in personal growth, mindfulness. It's kind of the opposite of thoughtlessness.
That's right.
We're trying to be more mindful. And if you want to be more mindful of how many ridiculous things you say that you don't want kids to absorb, be a parent.
The way the perfectionist in me protects itself is by saying that not being perfect is just an excuse for not good enough. It's like a justification for not good enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I have I have a new client right now who's dealing with eating disorders. And so one of the things, everybody's therapy is unique and different, but there are a few of the standard kind of little pieces I toss in at the very beginning. And one of them is that I'll say to the person, as you differentiate yourself from ED, which is what we call eating disorder for the acronym, as you differentiate yourself, I'm going to say some things and you're going to hear them one way and he's going to hear them another way. And one in particular is I'm going to say, you don't have to, and you're not going to do this perfectly. And what I say is, now keep in mind, you're going to understand what I mean by that. Ed is going to hear that only as permission to get you to fuck up. And it's like, so we're going to be working on that because I'm not willing to tell somebody, we got to do this perfectly, but I'm also not willing to hand that word over to my arch enemy, the eating disorder, because he will use it every time to do the same thing. And I use that as an example of myself saying, I haven't had a drink for 35 years. If you ask me if my recovery is perfect, I'll fall out of my chair laughing, and anybody who knows me will. It's like far from it. There's lots of room for imperfection. And I love your chapter on it because not only said perfectionism, but breaking the bonds. That's exactly it. It imprisons you. It ties you up in knots.
That's right. It really does. There's no questions about it. I love this idea that perfectionism spawns a self part called the top dog bully. Mm-hmm. And it's so true. I mean, we can call it the should monster. You've referred to it at that time. Mm-hmm. I love your little green squishy thing that you pick up as your should monster as a reminder.
Yep.
This top dog bully exists in every client I sit down with. And, and you see, it starts with Cece at 3 years old. She's already starting to form this part of her. That's saying.
Let me just say before you keep going, it's like it's in our culture so completely. Yeah. It's like, because even in terms of writing, you and I find we have different terms for certain things. But even the word bully, we both landed on that before we got together and started working. That's what the should monster had evolved. By the time I got to the embracing fear, that's what it's called, the bully. And yours, top dog bully. I noticed immediately when I heard you start talking about that. I wonder if that's what we're talking about. Yep, there he is. Yeah. Perfectionism is bullying.
It is bullying. I mean, it is bullying because first of all, it's black and white. It's absolute. If you're not this way, you're not okay. I mean, that's the first thing. The second thing that happens is it has no regard, that part, for our experience with it. The idea becomes more important than the person. And I cannot emphasize this enough, is that when ideas become more important than people, we're going to run into trouble. When my idea becomes more important than me, I'm going to be in big trouble.
The other piece that we need to toss in here, it also has, there's no way to get it right. See, the idea is we can, I always talk about how, the most important love that I have in my recovery is tough love, because I need that tough love. But it's like, there's no love with this. And it's like, if you're talking about a bully, on the outside of us in our interpersonal world, or it's the same thing with the intrapersonal bully. It's like its mission is to bully you. Its mission is to control you. Its mission is to intimidate you. It is not, it is not there to help you. It is not there. If you never talk to a bully and you say, well, how about if I did it this way? Would you then be okay? And, oh, yeah, that'd be fine. I wouldn't try to get your lunch money then. It's like, no, they just keep morphing into whatever they need to do, because their purpose is to put us down, to intimidate.
Right. I wanted to read this quote from Fritz Perls, because I think that he really captured this so well. This is on page 212 in the book. He goes, I said, Dr. Fritz Perls saw perfectionism as a basis for the famous self-torture game we play with ourselves, because it is a self-torture game.
Damn right it is.
He goes, we usually take for granted the top dog is right. In many cases, the top dog makes impossible perfectionistic demands. That's what you were just saying, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Impossible. So if you are cursed with perfectionism, he goes, you are sunk. I mean, right on, man. You're sunk. He goes, this ideal is a yardstick which always gives you the opportunity to browbeat yourself, to berate yourself and others. Since the ideal is an impossibility, you can never live up to it. Boy, I'm into that. The perfectionist is not in love with his wife. He is in love with his ideal. And he demands from his wife that she should fit in with this Greek mythological Procrustes bed of expectations. And he blames her if she does not fit. I'll tell you, man, he captured that so powerful. I mean, and we don't realize and see, and I know you've had this with your patients, when you confront them about their perfectionism, they go, I'm not a perfectionist, because they have this idea of perfectionist means that you're doing everything perfectly.
Right. Instead of what it really means, which is someone who believes they're supposed to always do something.
That's the difference. That's the difference that people don't get. And like you said, we're all cursed with this. This culture we live in promotes this idea. It transmits this idea. It's communicated in the family. Our parents believe that they have to be that way. They pass that on to us, and on we go, man.
Well, and that's a really good thing that for people who are listening to get too, because you don't just get this by people treating you this way as a child, because I'm a great example of that, because I think we could find some probably exceptions to this, but I did not grow up with messages that told me I was coming up short. That's not, it's like I got a lot of mine through absorbing that from my parents. When I look back through the history, I took some digging to do in therapy, because it wasn't verbal and stuff. But my parents were both had childhood in which they were both horribly mistreated in different ways, but they were really horribly mistreated, and so had really low, bad self-esteem, had their own coping mechanisms for that. And what I realized when I remember working with a therapist, just in my late 20s at one point, which said, it helped me realize that I was really working on a lot of stuff that it would have been nice if my mom or dad would have worked on in their own lives, that I wouldn't have maybe. I just remember that therapist looking at me saying, like, you realize this shame doesn't belong to you, right? And I went, what? And she goes, this is your father's. Yeah. This belongs to your father. And it's like, by the way, if you're listening and you identify with that, keep in mind, it doesn't mean I wasn't still responsible for dealing with it, because guess what? I can't say I never inherited anything, because I did. And I ultimately I can say even happily took responsibility for that, worked through that, and even had some conversations with my dad, shortly before he died about being able to come away with that. So, but anyway, yeah, it's not. Don't think just because people didn't tell you you're bad that, or that you had to do everything perfectly, that, it's like you said, one of the things I like to do is, I haven't done it in a long time since COVID, but when you get out to go out and speak to groups that are different for us, like people like, I do business, like supervisor training presentations or something, where people are not there. They're not a self-selected population. They're not there because they want mental health. They don't have a clue who the hell I am. It's like, I love doing those and talking about this stuff, the intrapersonal criticism and condemnation and bullying and perfectionism, because you just watch people's eyes just light up. It's like, and it doesn't mean everybody is hampered to the same degree with it. But I think you're right. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't have some part of this that they can identify with. It is universal in our culture.
Right. I believe that, and I see that. There's no question about it.
It goes back to childhood and seeking acceptance, right? I think you were talking a little bit in your book about how, this is a defense mechanism gone awry.
Well, you see, I like to think of it instead of a defense mechanism, because that sounds like something's wrong with us. Think of it as an adaptation. Mm-hmm. We call it the psychological adaptation syndrome instead of defense mechanism now. Mm-hmm. And so when we think of it as an adaptation, what we're really doing is we're trying to figure out, how can I ensure my existence? How can I live a life that might get me the love, acceptance, and belonging that I so deeply want and long for and need? Mm-hmm. And so that's where that comes from, is that we come up with this idealized self, just like Fritz was talking about. We have this ideal of who we should be to be okay. Mm-hmm. And that becomes the measure. And it is an impossible one, because it's based on absolutes. I must be this way all the time. I love this one line in here. We describe perfectionism, and I say we, Vince and I, as rigid precision. Is it must be this way, right? I have to be precise. I have to always be right, or I have to always be thoughtful, or I have to always be fill in the blank. And as soon as I have to always be, that's when I'm in trouble.
Love the word rigid, because rigidity is it. Yeah, because that's one thing I tell people. I'm not telling you that we're not going to do. You're not going to. There are going to be times where you do something and you go like, perfect. I did it perfectly. Right. It's like, but see, the thing with the perfectionist inside is the perfectionist says, one of my little nutshells says, be careful not to use your greatest accomplishment as your minimal expectation. Because that's what happens. Is like if it's a scale of 1 to 10 and I hit a 8.5, then what that perfectionist tells me is anything ever below an 8.5 is failure.
That's
and
right.
Of course, there's so many variables affecting our competence at any given time. The nature of our competence of anything, whether it be a professional thing or just being in a relationship, varies according to more variables than we can count. But I didn't realize it until just you said this. It's about the childhood stuff. It's because I've always been fascinated with rule learning. The idea that people are they're not going to state the rule. You're going to learn what the rule is. And the way you test rule learning is not because you don't say, I figured out the rule. Here's what it is. You just try to, you adhere to what you think the rules are. And when you match it up, it's, there's a wonderful game I learned in graduate school that made me fascinated with this, and we're going to do a very brief version of it here, but it's called Trophy Dot, and I'm going to say to you, I'm going to tell you some examples of trophy dots, and you guys are going to do the rule learning part. Now, you can't guess the rule out loud. You just go ahead and give me more examples, and I'm going to look around. Okay. The floor is a trophy dot, but the ceiling is not. My foot is a trophy dot, but my shoe is not. Those are a couple of examples. The street is a trophy dot, but the curb is not.
So the floor is a trophy dot, the ceiling's not. Then you go, my foot is a trophy dot, the shoe's not. Mm-hmm. Then the street is a trophy dot, but the curb's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I was thinking about, if you would have said, my shoe is a trophy dot, my foot's not, then I would have thought about it's things that you walk on, right? Or that
But see, this and I like this because it's well, let's face it. Why do I like that? Because I like knowing things other people don't. But it's like but if I were a better person, what I would like about it is that it really did get me caught into rule learning and noticing how much of our psychology is about that rule learning. It's like, by the way, the sky is not a trophy dot, but the moon is.
You know, the algorithm is that somehow I have to be this way to be okay.
The point I was thinking of is we get as close as we can in our childhood with learning the rules, but it's like we never get it right. See, that's that's where the perfectionist is always, it has an advantage. It's like we just get close to it because the rules themselves, from, I call it the invisible policy manuals from our childhood, is they have a zillion exceptions to them because nobody's ever actually expressed what they are. Nobody I always say everybody in my family knew what the invisible policy manual said, but nobody had ever acknowledged there was one or could show it to you, But when my wife, when Dee Dee, before we were married, first met my family, and my mother was punishing us by withholding lunch, which we were family reunion, all of my siblings knew this. We all knew this. She was in a depressed state, so she was not giving us lunch, and so we were all just sitting there in the living room of our house, and sitting around. And my wife, who Dee Dee was recovering from an eating disorder, she said, I'm going to make a sandwich. And the darts, they started coming at me from my grown siblings. I mean, it was like, they made Dallas look just a minute ago look like kindness. It was, and here's the sad punchline. I leaned down to Dee Dee and I said, "Don't make trouble."
Wow.
She said, "I'm going to make a sandwich." That was not rule learn this, it's like that was an automatic response for me. I didn't feel the need to explain to her why that was trouble. I just said, "Please don't make trouble," And by the way, to the delight of me now, Dee Dee got up and made a sandwich.
Good for her.
She's never let me forget that it was with white bread and bologna because that's all she could find. Again, welcome to my family. It's no, she made her sandwich. She was not. She was. As John Lewis says, she was making good trouble.
She was making good trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so tell us the rule. What's the trophy dot now? Come on.
All right. It's in spelling. It's the spelling. See, the trick is this: it's double letters in a word. That's it. The magic trick of it is you put two things together that seem to have a corresponding thing. See, I could actually say the moon's a trophy dot, my foot's a trophy dot, the wall's a trophy dot, but see, that would give it away. But if you pair it with something that is associated, it's a little bit of a magic trick in that way. And that's what it is. And it's like, I'm always amazed. There are some people who get it quite away there, and they tend to be visual spellers, but I always tell people when I do this thing is they had to tell me. I worked on it for weeks and never got it.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was focusing more on the functionality, rather than the structure of the thing.
Well, and what I'm doing by saying it the way I say it is, without saying this is a rule, I'm totally implying that you determine it according to the relationship of two things. It's like, and you don't.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool.
When you were talking earlier, Alan, about people becoming more in love with ideas or invested in ideas rather than in the concrete aspects of their relationships, and then you use the analogy of that couple that came in for counseling in your chapter. You kind of clocked early on that, like, you're in love with this idea of perfection and the reinforcement that comes from that in the relationship rather than this person, and how the idea gets in the way. Maybe we could talk a bit about that.
Well, right. I confronted that person in this session because, see, a lot of times that if somebody doesn't call this out, then we think the emperor's new clothes are really new clothes. And we don't see the truth of this thing. And until somebody points out what the reality is, we can't see the emperor has no clothes. And that's one of these things of the myth perfectionism, where people turn it into an ideal, like it's something to strive for. And how could you not want to do things perfectly and be perfect? Well, when you start to look behind the scenes on that, it's a curse. It's not something to be proud of and to strive for, because first of all, it is impossible. Like Tom said, sometimes we might do something perfect, but that's going to be a one and done deal. And you may do it again in a couple of days. But to think we're going to somehow move in and set up shop there, it's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah, we're not going to. We visit it every now and again. Walt used to tell me that. Dr. Kempler said that. He says, Alan, there's nothing wrong with striving for perfection as long as you never fool yourself into thinking you can achieve it.
Yeah.
He says, there's nothing wrong with
I love that.
Best job you can do, right?
Well, because that's direction. See, I mean, I always talk to people about, you set your goals according to direction, not that rigid precision. Is that what you were?
That's a rigid precision. That's right.
Yeah. That you and Vince came up with. It's like no. This is that. Yeah. I'm going in the direction of what. And again, that's also perfection. There are certain things where it's different, but in relationship and communication, perfection is also a subjective. Yeah. We have to keep that in mind. It's like something, we may come away from, the three of us, we talk a little bit when we finish do a podcast, stuff like that. One of us might go, that was perfect. The other one might go, I don't know. It's like, or, whatever that happens to be. Speaking of which, I'm already hearing from my bully. We'll just go ahead and we'll do it in the present tense. I'm going like, Tom, you derailed the conversation with your game. It's like that's what it's telling me. It's like, and I'm going like, and I'm grateful for Patrick, because Patrick, God, he's getting good at keeping us on track. It's like it's.
Well, I don't think.
See, I saw the game as an example. See, I was sitting here really torturing myself to get the perfect answer. I decided to take a break from my private practice. I was having some personal problems, and I thought, it might be better if I step out of it. I got interviewed by Cumberland Heights. I told them what was going on. Full disclosure, the things I was struggling with. They decided to hire me, and I became the chief clinical officer for a few years at Cumberland Heights. Well, they had a guy there. I can't remember his name right now. That was wonderful in experiential therapy. What they called experiential therapy was really like going out and doing things like out in the wilderness, like ropes course, things like that. But
like adventure therapy thing. Yeah.
Adventure therapy.
Yeah,
but, there was a real psychological part to it if you really processed it, which is what, I think the feedback I gave to him is that, wow, there's so many jewels here. And by not taking the time to process them, they get lost. So they called this thing the spider's web. And so he asked me if I'd like to come out and do it. So we had about 40 patients in treatment at that time. And what happens is that there's all these lines that are run between trees.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so everybody is blindfolded. You have to grab the line somewhere along this whole web of these different ropes going between trees. And the instructions are there's two things. You have to find the way out. There's an exit point somewhere in this web, and you have to find it. Now, the rule is you can't take off your blindfold. You have to keep your blindfold on. You have to keep your hand on the rope. And you can ask for help at any point in time to ask a question or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I get on a rope and I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm Dr. Berger. I'm the PhD out here. And you got Tom knows that I'm already in trouble. I'm already in trouble.
Right. When your first affirmation is I'm Dr. Berger. That's
So I'm the clinical supervisor, the chief clinical officer of this program, and I'm with 40 patients, most of which have just come out of detox. So I think, look, I'm going to nail it. I'll probably be the first one out, right?
I already love the story.
Come on, I'm the first one out. I got to be the first one out. So we get on the rope, and I go, I know. Listen, I played Dungeons and Dragons before when they first came out. I know how to map a dungeon and stuff like that, and so I will start mapping in my head and go systematically from one point to the next, and I will discover the exit point on this. Of
course you will. Yes.
So there's an hour time limit on this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the first few minutes, I'm executing my strategy, going from one down the rope, putting in my mind this map of this thing, and I'm going down, and then all of a sudden I hear somebody go, or the facilitator says, "Okay, he's out over here," and then I hear somebody else over here. He's out over here. Well, now my mind's getting all jarbled. It's like, how can there be multiple exit points on this thing? And I'm starting up. My whole plan now is fucked up. I'm getting confused.
Yeah, you were trying to find the exit. Yeah.
I was looking for the exit point. All right. So remember, I told you there's a time limit.
Mm-hmm.
There's an hour. We're down to 55 minutes. There's two people left on the fucking rope. Guess who the two people are?
You and somebody who's not completed their detox.
Dr. Berger and a woman that everybody knows is organic. She's done so much brain damage from her drinking. They're still betting that she's going to find the exit before me.
That's where the smart money is.
This is where the smart money goes that she's going to discover. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
So the hour's up. Well, the two of us are left. We get to take our blind spot off. So I go, where the hell was it?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the patients looked at me and says, you had to ask for help to find it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the key. As soon as you raise your hand, can you help me find out where that spot is? The person would let you off the rope.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't where, it's how.
But I was going to find the where of it all.
You were.
And I was going to do it perfectly, and I was obviously smarter than everybody else.
But I tell you what, this is hilarious. I have tears in my eyes from laughing at this. It's like, but what a powerful lesson for you or any of us who get to a place where we have, many times where what's one of the side effects of accomplishment is, we're going to experience, we really can experience overconfidence at times. It's like, it's
patients that this was probably one of the best therapeutic things that happened to the patients while they were in treatment.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And they love the fact that I go, my God, I see exactly what I did to set myself up. And I'll tell you, I got so much street credibility from the patients from living that honestly as I did with them, and was able to laugh at myself and really enjoy the lesson.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But I was gonna get it perfectly.
Right, but you're an idiot.
I am an idiot. I know that today. Thank God. I do know that. So next time, let's focus on what we can do about this stuff. Do not do what Dr. Berger does. or did, and just hang on the thing and not ask for help. That's number one. But we'll talk more about strategies next time.
And I'd like to thank you on the air, Tom, for the very kind email you sent me. I think it was on Friday about the Rittenhouse verdict and telling me to, not hang myself and try to write through some of the grief that I was feeling about darkness in the world.
Well, you're welcome. I know it was a heartbreaker for me, and I know how what an empath you are in terms of all of that goes on. So don't give up. That's to everybody. Don't give up.
I meant that figuratively, by the way. I wasn't really going to hang myself. Probably just eat a lot of ice cream.
Right. Hang yourself, eat a lot of ice cream. Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. No, I just knew that was, you're welcome.
Yeah. You guys are always thinking of others, and I try to take a page from you. We'll continue this subject next week.
Well, and we will say happy Thanksgiving to everybody, right? Before we leave, and take some time to reflect on those things that you're grateful for. But remember, gratitude is not something that stops you from saying what you want. If you're really grateful, gratitude helps you be yourself, not to subtract from yourself.
We will be in our group on Thursday evening, Thanksgiving or not, right?
We have to have the right relationship to our gratitude and not use it.
I like it.
To stop ourselves, but to use it to be ourselves.
Everybody's welcome.
Tend your life, tend your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.